Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar session today. This is part of our webinar sessions we're going to have as part of Polaron Connect webinar series. Today, we're going to talk about 5 simple and effective ways to reach cold audiences. Just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded right now and we're going live on Facebook. All right, I just wanted to give you a quick introduction about the presenters. Eva Hussein is a recognized leader in the fields of translation and European citizenship. She's the founder of Polaron, and she's also an interpreter and translator in the English and Polish language pairs. Also, we have Nicholas. Nicholas is the client relationship manager at Polaron. His job is overseas communication and build positive relationship with Polaron's clients. And just at the bottom, that's me. I'm Andrea. I just recently joined Polaron as the marketing and communications officer. Let's continue. So who we are? Polaron is an international social enterprise with expertise, networks, and systems that empower people and organizations by connecting them to the global community. We've been running Polaron since 2000. It's been working in partnership with clients and diverse communities to deliver multilingual projects. We have offices in Australia, Europe, and US. And the key of our success has been our ability to build value through delivering projects on time and on budget. So what we do, there's a wide range of activities and services that we provide. You can see just a short list of what we do: community approved translations, plain and easy English resources, culturally appropriate graphic design. We also do interpreting, face-to-face, video interpreting, delegations, conference, business, and so on. We also have multimedia production, including subtitling, voiceovers, animation, and videos, and community consultation and focus groups. Okay, we just want to know a bit about what are your challenges as a client, as an organization. We want to hear from you. Basically, what would you like to get from this webinar? You can pick just one option. So first option will be number 1, I don't know how to reach my audiences effectively. Is that your biggest challenges? Yes or no? Second, I don't know how to tell if my translations are good quality. Third, I'm not always sure which languages to pick. Fourth, my translation budget is not sufficient. 5, I usually have to meet tight deadlines. And last one, I don't know best practice. So you can vote in the chat, send us your feedback, and so we can just start a quick discussion and an interaction with you guys. If you can send us your feedback, that will be much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, don't be shy, just send us your comments. All right, so we have people saying that they're not sure which language to pick. We have 2 people saying number 1, they say, I don't know how to reach my audiences effectively. So there are different options, yeah. So we have number 1 again, 3 times. So I would say 60% of people is saying the first option, they don't know how to reach the audience effectively. Okay, thank you so much, guys, for voting. We also have number 4 and number 5 as a reply. Number 4, my translation budget is not sufficient. Thank you for voting, guys. I'll pass it on to Eva now. She's gonna talk about another of the part of the presentation.
Thank you, Andrea, for that introduction. So we're going to run through this quite quickly. And look, I wanted to explain also why we're only doing half an hour. And that is because, you know, obviously people are busy. So we are trying to cram in quite a bit. But if anybody wants to discuss this with us later, you're more than welcome to. What I've put together there with my team is a few tips on how to engage CALD audiences, so culturally and linguistically diverse. The first thing I would be recommending is to collect data, and we're not so good at it, to be perfectly honest. We are often in the dark about who the target audience is. So if your organization collects data as far as your clients, then that's good. If you don't, then you should start. But there's lots of other ways of gathering data from ABS and from other sources. The most important thing there is not to assume. So what we know about different communities might not be what is actually happening to you. So it's really important, I feel, to reach out to them in person. And there are lots of community events. There are lots of ways of doing that, which is currently not available because we are all in lockdown. But if I could suggest to, you know, work within your own networks of trying to reach community leaders and other people that might give you the information that you're after, but also really understand, you know, the numbers, the languages spoken in different communities. It does require engagement on your part and talking to your communities. As far as the content, again, that's a bit of a challenge. And I think it's really fair to say that the translation as we know it not only has changed in the last few weeks, but it's been changing for a long time. So when we talk to clients, we do advise them often not to translate. And why do we do that? It is because some communities cannot read. And also the way that we acquire and process information nowadays is also different. So it's no different to diverse communities. We do not read stuff anymore as much as we used to. We consume a lot more video content. We also consume chunks of information rather than you know, pages and pages of stuff. So when you look at who you want to talk to, you also need to look at how you want to talk to them. And you do need to be creative, particularly budget is an issue, as we heard from a few people already. I did put there, choose the right provider. And those of you that know me personally, you'll know that I'm very passionate about translation. Being a translator and interpreter myself, I've been around for a long time. And I also came here as a refugee with not one word of English, so I know how hard it is to not to understand what service providers are telling you with the best intentions sometimes. And when you choose your provider, you need to pick someone, hopefully it's, you know, Polaron, but if it isn't, you need to talk to them and ask them who they are. You know, we do hear horror stories about translations being sent overseas, and that's not a good thing, because the translators that are based, you know, overseas might be great translators, but they just don't have the context of the local community, and they won't be able to produce translations that are relevant and culturally appropriate, because we do have different terminology. There's quite a few differences. You know, so do ask your service providers, who are their translators, where are they based? You know, ask your provider for references, for types of projects they've worked on in the past. So just to give you an idea of how they can assist you. The other important thing is the customer service. You know, are they reachable by phone? Are they responsive? Are they able to nurture you through the process of you know, producing resources, especially if it's your first time? You know, often we hear from a lot of clients, oh, it's just landed on my desk and I've never done a translation project before. So it's really important to develop that relationship with your service provider and trust them, so that you know that the resources that you have developed together and have paid for appropriate for your community. Engaging with your community is a two-way street. So recently, I've seen a website, with great information, and at the very bottom of the web page, in probably about 20 languages, it said, if you want more information, email us. And I'm sort of sitting thinking, okay, how do you actually want that to happen? What is the point of putting something like that on your website where you know that people aren't going to be able to do it? Because, if you don't speak English, you're sitting there thinking, even though you're reading the information in your language, you're thinking, okay, what language do I write to this person in? How are they going to respond to me? So if you're going to have initiatives that are opening that two-way street, think about logistically and logically about how you're enabling that. So it's great to make translated information available, but what does it mean to the end user, to the person that's sitting at home, especially now, wanting to connect with you? And that's a challenge because, we might not have the resources to enable people to talk to us. So there are some simple ways of doing that that we might be able to cover at our next webinar. And the last point that I wanted to make is to be genuine, and curious about your communities, curious about best practice. Ask community members what it is that works for them. And some of the solutions may need to be tailor-made. So what works for the Chinese-speaking community may not work for Arabic-speaking community. It's just how it is. So it does require, a bit of creativity. And if you find something that works for you, keep repeating it. Although, the world that we live in is so quickly changing, if something's really worked for you or for your colleagues, keep doing the same thing. We'll go on to the next slide. It's also important to share resources with others in your network as well. I think there's a bit of a delay with the slides. There we go. But wait, there's more. Okay, so that's just very quickly before I hand over to Nick. I wanted to talk to everybody about linguistic assets. And it sounds like a really fancy title for something that's really simple. And what it is this, that if you've done translations, you own them. Your organizations own them. And you also own and are responsible for how they are managed. So what I mean by that is that if you have done a translation into 20 languages, you should have a glossary of terms so that for next time when you updating your resources or doing other languages, you have something to relate to. So now on our website, you'll see here, and Andrea, we can move on to the next slide. There's something that we call the knowledge base. In it, we've put all kinds of guides, like a guide to community approved translations, fact sheets, and other resources that you can relate to. Next, please. And you can look at, yeah. There are fact sheets about web accessibility, all kinds of things. I won't go through it now, but you can have a look at it. But what I will show you when we get to the next slide. Thanks, Andrea. Is something that's really important for every organization to have, and I cannot stress it enough. It's a translation style guide. I don't have a lot of time to go into it in a lot of details, but you'll see that it covers things like all the rules around language, and not just English, because different things work differently in different languages, but things like formatting, how you're presenting the information, punctuation, all of that can be covered in your translation guide. And I've also given you a screenshot there of a glossary of terms. As an example, I've put there the word screen. In English alone, it's got about 8 different meanings, if not more. And depending on the context, it'll be used in a different way. So things like the name of your organization, it's really important. You own it, you want it translated every time the same way. One of your linguistic assets should be a glossary of terms. And I think that's it from me. Let's see the next slide. And over to Nicholas.
All right, so I'm hoping that everyone can hear me nice and clear. We've had a couple issues with the technology side of things, but look, we've got a few participants here and some really nice names that I can recognize. So thanks everyone for for attending. I just want to be brief in this case study. Obviously, we've got 30 minutes, but I thought what better way to explain the best ways to communicate with our cold audiences than showing you an example. So this example here, thankfully, came from FPV, Family Planning Victoria. Now, we've got a very nice friend over there who's allowed us to use her translations project as a bit of an example. So I just want to run through basically what was going through her head at the time, what happened throughout the process, what we did to deliver a plan and go through with the translations project. So you'll see here on the slides that the topic was a bit challenging. Now, the topic was on contraception resources. And now, depending on which community you're from, that can be a very tricky and challenging thing to deal with. So what we did with this project is we actually adapted a community consultation approach to it, as opposed to a standard translation. And you'll see behind me actually here that we've got our community approved translations. And this is actually what we've used in this translation to ensure that the terms we were translating were culturally appropriate. Now, this occurs quite a lot. We deal with a lot of topics in communications that might not be very PC or safe. So it's important to get the community to look at them and ensure that those terms we're using and translating are, in fact, safe for the community. Now, I've got a couple dot points here as to what we looked at in the project, and basically we ran through it in a project plan. We developed a project plan, we assessed the problems at hand and how we were going to tackle them. Community consultation was one of them, and then the medium we actually used, which was video, subtitling and voice recording. Now, I'll show a quick snippet of it in a little bit, but let me talk you through it. We also had to work with budget. Budget is a very big thing that's on a lot of people's minds. Just by looking at the challenges that everyone said before, budget's definitely on the cards. Now, we needed to work within a budget and see how we could maneuver certain translators and certain parts to the translation to fit her budget and family planning's budget. Timelines. This is something that a lot of people deal with. So we had to work around timelines as well. And now this is something that Polaron is very flexible with. If many of the clients in the chat have worked with us, then please let us know, because I'm sure you can agree with us that we are very flexible on timelines. The ways in which we presented the information. So like I've mentioned before, the medium we chose was the video, subtitles and voice recording. This is going to cover as much of our communities as possible, given literacy levels may not be as prevalent in some. The ways in which we disseminated that information as well. Now, community approved translations is a great way to talk about this, because while we're getting that community approval, we're actually endorsing the product and getting it through to our communities here in Victoria for Family Planning Victoria. I'll move on to the next slide here just to show a little bit more of this under the time clock, obviously. Okay, perfect. So from all of that, we stemmed a project that was not only culturally safe, it was one that disseminated well throughout the community, and it was also visually appealing, which is something that I think a lot of communications managers and marketing managers and health professionals need to take into account when developing their resources. So the outcomes is that we had a simple, effective, and a shareable resource that really resonated with the audience. And this is definitely big props to Family Planning for developing a visual that would disseminate well and is very clear. All that's left from us is to take that and put it into another language. A big part of what you guys can do is develop the resources in English, in simple English, obviously, so that once they come to translations, it's a much easier process. Cost efficiencies. And now you say to me, Nick, why is there a cost efficiency here? How does that occur? Well, if we look at developing resources, it's got a very big cost efficiency associated to it. If you're able to develop a resource that is lasting, effective, simple, and clear, it means that you will not need to go back, review it, edit it, update it, because you've got that lasting resource. And that's something that Family Planning Victoria have got here. They've got a simple and effective resource. It's going to be long-term, it's going to last, and it's going to be clear. That saves them a lot of money in the long term, and it can definitely do the same for you if you adopt a similar strategy. The last thing here is an enhanced knowledge for FPV. When my client came to me at the beginning of the process, it was a very difficult time for her. She was new in the communications position there at FPV, and she was really looking for some support. With Polaron, not only do you get the final resource, but we talk you through the process. We explain certain things like what Eva's mentioned previously, linguistic asset management and knowledge bases that we've got here on deck. And basically, we pass that information on to you, so that when you come back with another project, or your manager or execs have given you another translations project, you're more knowledgeable than you were before, and you're able to use the tools that were given to you by Polaron in order to develop that project quicker, better in terms of budget, and better with timelines. So those three things I think are really important takeaways from this. Now, I'm very conscious of the time that we've got and whether there may be questions towards the end. So I'll jump to the next slide, but before we play it, Andrea, I just want to talk you through a little bit of what's gone on in this next slide, and that is a lot of behind the scenes work with voice recording, video editing, speaking with the client, speaking with communities. At some times when you're dealing with something like 10 languages in a community approved process where there's voice recording and video editors, you can have almost 100 people in the process. And I think that's something that we need to take into account here. So without further ado, and thank you to Family Planning Victoria for allowing us to put this through, but I'll get Andrea to play it and just take a look and see what it is. All right. So it looks like the audio there was a bit in the wrong, but you get the picture basically. And what we've got there is a resource that's clear, it's animated, so it's very simple for all users. It's culturally appropriate because it is animated. What you would have heard in the background is a Chinese simplified or Mandarin voice recording over the top of a subtitled video, which also has on-screen text edited. Now, when we manage all of these components into one and produce a video like the one you've just seen, you're going to be hitting as many areas and ticking as many of those boxes that you need for your community. So I just want to leave that with you. So when you go for your next project, or when your boss or manager asks you, what can we do next in terms of communication, please consider the following things we've discussed today. Looking at your linguistic assets and glossaries and things like that, and as well as the other kinds of mediums or formats we can use in translations, not just the standard fact sheet or the standard word for word translation. Let's look at innovating, let's look at expanding into new horizons and developing resources like the ones I've just shown. Hopefully you've taken a little bit away from what we can do here at Polaron, but if you've got any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always here and I'm always up for a chat. So with that, I might pass on to the next slide.
All right. Thank you very much, Eva and Nick, for this presentation. Hopefully, everything was very useful for you, for all the attendees. So if you have any question, just send us the question by the chat. And if not, you can send us an email as well. There you will have, you will see the contact details of the account managers, and also Eva, Nicholas, and me. So if you have any doubts, just don't hesitate to contact us. Maybe we can just take a few moments to reply to some of the questions we have. So there's a question from one of the attendees. Is Polaron able to develop translation style guides for clients? If Eva or Nicholas want to reply to this question.
Eva. Yeah, I'll let Eva jump on.
Thank you. I might step in. Look, this is actually music to my ears that somebody's asking that, and that is because it's one of the most important things that you can do for a few reasons. One is that it gives you control of your linguistic assets. So let's say you're working with one particular translator or translation company. You can develop that, and then if you decide to change providers, or you might have internal bilingual staff who want to contribute to that. That is something that you own, and that is something that you can be responsible for. But by all means, we provide you with templates and help you put it all together. We've done it for a number of different organizations, and it does contribute to the quality of your translation in a major way. Because once you've agreed, let's say whether your company name or organization name gets translated or not, that's carried through, anything you translate. So, to answer your question, yes, absolutely, we do.
We also have another question on the topic of encouraging tailor-made solutions for different CALD communities. How do you suggest handling numerous communication methods for different CALD communities in regards to time, resources, knowledge transfer, etc.?
Yes, that's a big question.
Yep. Yes, it's a bit long. Yeah.
It's a big question, but a really, really important one. And I think, look, if you're after just ticking boxes on your diversity strategy, then don't do it. But if you're genuinely interested in engaging the communities and making sure that what they get at the end of the process is something that's useful, that provides value, and lets you sleep at night knowing that they received information that's accurate, well translated, and actually useful, the way to do it is to look at the community needs. So often we will be working for clients who understand that and allow us to guide them through the process. So as an example, we developed resources for Quit Victoria, and they were really quite different for Arabic speakers and Chinese speakers because their learning styles are different, the cultural practices are different. So we've got this 80-20 rule where about 20% of the content can be adjusted to the community, and that ranges from images to the actual, text and what it says. But the main thing to remember is that you are in charge of how that's managed, as in we can assist you with information, but at the end of the day, the decision rests with you on how that is developed. So I think we are planning another webinar in a couple of weeks to cover that in a lot more detail, but it is not as simple as saying, the Russian speaking community is this, because it isn't, everyone's different, but at the end of the day, the challenge is to develop information that maximizes your reach and is uniform and in line with your organization's message. So, yes, you have to consult with the community, but at the end of the day, you have to pull it back to what it is that you are preaching, if I can put it that way. Yeah, maybe Nicholas wanted to contribute more.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The only thing I could probably add is focus groups as well. I think focus groups are a great idea to finding that information that you've mentioned there, like we did for Quit, and using culturally appropriate images. There's a couple clients here that I know are registered today. Respect Victoria, Diabetes New South Wales, both very, very good at adopting that strategy that you've mentioned, Eva, where they go out and get those culturally appropriate images. They receive information from Polaron as to how to go about it as well. They develop those resources in such a way where it is targeting those communities specifically and engaging them properly. So I agree with you there, Eva, and I think focus groups are a really important part of that.
Okay, maybe we can have 1 more minute to reply to this question. How long did a project like the FPV one take?
Yep, perfect. So the Family Planning Victoria project did not take very long. Community approved translations, depending on obviously the volume of what you do, can be anywhere between 10 to 15 days. So a very short process. The actual voice recording, video editing, subtitling component of things might be as quick as another 5 to 10 days as well. It can be turned around very, very quickly. In some cases, we do ask for flexibility where the project is a bit more lengthy or issues can occur. But generally speaking, projects like that with correct organisation and correct contracting can be completed within a month's time, even sooner.
Thank you, Nicholas and Eva. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Hope you can join us for the next webinar. We'll send you the details shortly. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.